Have you ever paused to think about the sheer cleverness behind some crimes? Not, the loud stuff, but the quiet, sophisticated financial crimes where huge sums just disappear.
Right. Billions sometimes.
Today, we're really getting into the strategies, the methods behind these schemes.
Exactly. We're looking beyond just single events. We want to understand the patterns, the kind of blueprints criminals use again and again. We're diving deep into financial crime typologies.
Okay.
And we're using some really insightful material from FinCrime intelligence to help guide us. They're leaders in researching this field.
Right, typology. It still sounds a bit maybe academic, but I liked your magician analogy earlier. You see the trick, but the real secret is knowing how it's done.
Hmm.
The specific moves, the hidden steps. So a financial crime typology is basically the documented method, the playbook criminals use for illegal money stuff.
That's it exactly. It's the how-to. And understanding that how is critical for the good guys.
Yeah, because just knowing that crime happens isn't enough, is it? Not really. The real power comes from understanding the specific techniques. Are they using shell companies? Exploiting certain regulatory gaps? you know.
Okay.
So our mission today is to give you, the listener, a much clearer picture of these methods, because that knowledge is genuinely empowering.
Yeah, it gives you a real advantage. It's like knowing your opponent's game plan, whether you're in finance, running a business, or frankly, just trying to understand the news. Knowing these typologies helps you see potential problems coming.
Helps you build better defenses, too.
It's about shifting, isn't it? From just reacting after the fact.
Exactly, from being reactive to becoming more proactive.
Yeah.
If you know how certain crimes usually play out, institutions, even individuals, can tweak their defenses. Maybe spot trouble earlier.
Before it becomes a full-blown crisis.
Precisely.
So instead of just a vague, be more careful, it lets us ask, like, okay, this specific fraud type is increasing. What exact red flags should we program our systems to look for? Much more targeted. Absolutely. And a good typology, a really well-developed one, isn't just a loose idea. It has specific parts that make it useful.
Okay, what are those?
Well, first, there's a detailed description of the criminal behavior itself, like a step-by-step narrative of how the crime usually unfolds.
Right, like mapping out the typical moves they make.
Exactly. Then second, it lays out the red flags and indicators. Those observable signs, those little oddities that should make you suspicious. Think of, say, a company suddenly doing tons of business with firms in high-risk countries out of the blue.
Yeah.
That could be a red flag needing a closer look.
Got it. Those little things that might seem minor alone, but in context?
In the context of a known method, yeah, they suddenly mean a lot more.
Okay, what else?
Then you have risk factors. These are things like certain customer types, specific locations, industries, even financial products that historically seem more vulnerable to particular crimes.
So maybe a brand new company dealing only in crypto might signal a different, maybe higher risk for certain laundering types than, say, a long-established corner shop.
Precisely that kind of distinction. And finally, the best typologies often include case studies, real-world examples.
Okay.
Now, our source material today focuses more on the framework itself, but it's so important to mention these case studies. They show how the typology works in practice. That's where the learning really sticks.
Totally agree. Theory is one thing, but seeing how crooks actually used a technique, which specific loophole they exploited, that makes it real.
Exactly. So having all these pieces, the steps, the flags, the risks, the real examples, that's what really equips us to fight back effectively.
Makes sense. So let's make it even more concrete. Can we look at some common typologies in different crime areas? Maybe start with money laundering. That's the classic one, right?
Good place to start. The act of making dirty money look clean.
What are some key methods there?
Well, the FinCrime intelligence material highlights trade-based money laundering. This is quite sophisticated.
How does that work?
They basically manipulate international trade. They might lie about the price, the quantity, or even the quality of goods being shipped across borders. It's a way to move illicit funds and make them look like legitimate business earnings.
Sneaky. Using real trade as a cover.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And then there's real estate, always a popular choice.
Why is that so common?
Well, it's often quite difficult to see who truly owns a property, right? They use complex layers, shell companies, trusts, often spread across different countries. It creates this opacity that makes it hard to trace the dirty money.
Right. Hiding in plain sight, almost.
And maybe surprisingly for some, casinos can be used too. Think about it. Lots of cash flowing, chips being bought and cashed out.
Ah, I see. Provides a way to mix illicit cash with legitimate gambling winnings, or seem to.
Exactly. It offers a seemingly legitimate reason for having large amounts of cash.
Wow. It's kind of disturbing how normal activities, trade, property deals, casinos can be twisted. Really shows the deception involved. What about terrorist financing? That must use different tactics.
It often does. The source material emphasizes that terrorist financing frequently relies on lots of small transfers.
Small ones, not big lump sums.
Often, yes. Unlike huge laundering transactions that might trigger alerts, these smaller amounts, maybe sent frequently, can fly under the radar individually. But added up, they can fund significant operations.
That's clever in a chilling way.
And another key method is exploiting nonprofit organizations, using the cover of legitimate charities or NGOs to move funds covertly.
Oof. Using goodwill as a disguise. That's quite grim.
Okay, shifting gears to fraud. This feels closer to home for many people, I think. Typologies pop up there.
Fraud's a big category. The material points out a few key ones. Investment scams are, unfortunately, always with us.
Promising huge returns on fake opportunities.
Exactly. Preying on people's hopes. Then there's synthetic identity fraud. This one's pretty insidious and growing.
Synthetic identity, what's that? It's where criminals don't just steal one person's identity. They create a new, fake one by patching together bits of real and fake information. Maybe a real social security number with a made-up name and address.
Wow. And then use that fake person to open accounts.
Precisely. Open accounts, get loans, make purchases. It's harder to detect because there's no single real victim reporting their identity stolen initially.
Nasty. And what else in fraud?
Invoice manipulation is another big one, especially for businesses. Criminals send fake invoices or maybe intercept and alter real ones, hoping the business will just pay them without checking carefully.
Right, targeting busy accounts, payable departments. Okay, what about the tech side? Cybercrime.
In the digital world, ransomware is obviously huge right now.
Yeah, we hear about that constantly. Locking up systems and demanding payment.
Usually in crypto, yeah, that's a clear typology. Another, maybe less obvious one is cryptojacking.
Cryptojack.
Yeah, where criminals secretly install malware on your computer or even websites that uses your device's processing power to mine cryptocurrency for them. They're essentially stealing your electricity and computing resources.
Without you even knowing it, potentially.
Often, yes. So cybercrime typologies range from overt extortion to these more hidden resource thefts.
Okay. And lastly, what about bribery and corruption? How do those typologies work since they're often so hidden?
They typically involve creating complex, deliberately confusing structures. A common typology is using offshore accounts and intermediaries.
Go-betweens.
Exactly. Third parties, shell companies, lawyers, accountants may be designed to break the direct link between the person paying the bribe and the person receiving it. Makes it incredibly hard for investigators to follow the money.
Layers upon layers of obfuscation. It's really eye-opening seeing the variety across all these areas. And as the FinCrime intelligence stuff suggests, this isn't static, right? Criminals are always adapting.
Absolutely. They're incredibly resourceful. They jump on new technologies, find loopholes in new regulations, even exploit global events. It's a constant cat and mouse game.
Which is why just understanding yesterday's typologies isn't enough.
Precisely. And that leads us nicely into the role that regulatory bodies play here.
Right. Who are the main players keeping track of all this and trying to get ahead?
Well, you have major international groups like the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, and also the Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units. These bodies are crucial. They regularly publish detailed reports specifically on new and emerging typologies.
Okay, FATF and Egmont Group. And what's the goal of these reports? Who reads them?
The main audience is the financial industry itself, banks, payment providers, etc., but also law enforcement and government policymakers. The reports essentially act as intelligence briefings.
Like an early warning system.
Exactly. They flag new criminal methods, point out red flags to look for, and provide guidance on how institutions should update their defenses, their anti-money laundering or counter-terrorist financing controls. It's about sharing knowledge so everyone can strengthen their systems.
The source mentions some specific examples of these reports.
It did. FATF, for instance, has put out key reports on the risks around virtual assets, crypto, and also new payment methods. They see where technology is going and try to anticipate the criminal exploitation.
Makes sense?
And the Egmont Group, which connects financial intelligence units globally, published work on financial crimes linked to the COVID-19 pandemic,
Okay.
showing just how fast criminals adapted to that crisis.
Wow, yeah. That really highlights the speed needed to keep up. So, okay, these reports come out. How do banks and other financial institutions actually use this information day to day, turn it into action?
That's the critical step. They integrate these typology insights in several practical ways. A big one is updating their transaction monitoring systems.
They're computer systems that flag suspicious activity.
Right. Knowing the latest red flags for, say, trade-based money laundering lets them fine-tune the rules in those systems, make them smarter at catching the right things.
So better filters, basically, based on current criminal behavior.
Exactly. They also use it to enhance their Know Your Customer or KYC procedures.
Checking customer identities and activity.
Yes. If a typology highlights risks associated with certain industries or transaction patterns, they might apply more scrutiny, ask more questions, or monitor those accounts more closely, adjusting their due diligence based on known methods.
And it can't just be about tech, right? People must be involved.
Absolutely vital. Staff training is another key application. Equipping employees, especially those on the front line dealing with customers or reviewing alerts to recognize the signs of new or evolving threats, is crucial. They are often the first line of defense.
Right, empowering them to spot things that might look subtly wrong based on these known typologies.
Precisely. Not just following procedures blindly, but understanding the why behind them and recognizing new tactics.
Okay. And looking forward, you mentioned criminals adapt. How is the field of typology development itself changing to keep pace?
Well, technology is playing a huge role, as you'd expect. The FinCrime intelligence material hints at this. One major potential development is using AI and machine learning for, essentially, real-time typology updates.
So AI could spot new patterns emerging in transaction data much faster than humans analyzing reports.
That's the idea. Imagine risk models that dynamically update themselves as new criminal behaviors are detected in vast datasets. That could drastically cut down the lag time between criminals innovating and defenses adapting.
That sounds like a game changer, from periodic reports to almost continuous learning.
It could be. Another big trend is more emphasis on cross-sector collaboration,
Meaning.
breaking down silos,
Hmm.
more information sharing, sharing typology insights between banks and law enforcement, public sector and private sector working together more closely. Collective intelligence is much stronger,
Makes total sense. A unified front is harder to penetrate.
definitely. And finally, there's a growing need to develop typologies for risks in completely new areas. Think about the metaverse, decentralized finance, DeFi, these emerging digital ecosystems.
Right. Where value is exchanged in new ways, criminals will inevitably follow. We need to understand how they might operate there too.
Exactly. We need to anticipate the typologies that will emerge in those spaces.
So it seems understanding these typologies, these methods, is just fundamental, isn't it?
It really is. It's the cornerstone of effectively fighting back against illicit finance. It always comes back to understanding how the criminals operate. That knowledge underpins everything else: faster detection, better prevention, a safer financial system overall.
So for you listening, the big takeaway here is that getting your head around these methods, these typologies, isn't just, an academic thing. It really gives you a powerful framework for understanding a super complex issue. When you grasp the how, the what, and why of financial crime, make a lot more sense.
Well said. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. As our world gets ever more connected digitally and totally new ways of exchanging value pop up, what completely new, maybe unforeseen financial crime typologies might we be facing in the coming years? It really underscores that this is an ongoing challenge, needing constant vigilance and, well, understanding.